Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Ini Pantau Agenda Reformasi dan sebelah tadi merupakan sidang media dan juga taklimat daripada pejabat Perdana Menteri. Antara lain menyatakan bahawa Perdana Menteri akan meneruskan kerja-kerja berkaitan diplomasi antarabangsa ke APEC ke Korea Selatan, yang mana ketika ini editor Kanan kami Haris Ashraf Hasnan sudah pun berada di sana untuk membawa liputan dan kita akan bawa perkembangan itu semasa ke semasa. Tapi untuk waktu ini tumpuan masih kepada ASEAN dan tumpuan lebih khusus untuk tujuan petang ini ialah isu di Myanmar dan juga Rohingya. Dalam hal tersebut, ketika sidang media semalam, Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim menyatakan dan mengakui bahawa masih banyak perkara yang perlu dilakukan untuk menyelesaikan konflik kemanusiaan di Myanmar, termasuk pelaksanaan konsensus 5 perkara ASEAN. Beliau menegaskan kemajuan yang dicapai sepanjang Malaysia memegang kepengurusan ASEAN bukan kecil, malah ia adalah permulaan yang baik.
Kita berusaha sedaya upaya bawa kebaikan dan perubahan sedaya upaya. Apa dia upaya kita yang pertama? Hentikan serangan sama ada kepada Buddhis di Karen atau Muslim Rakhine yang Rohingya. Itu. Dan bagi saya, walaupun tidak sepenuhnya, itu kejayaan sangat besar. Permulaannya. Sekarang kita kena teruskan. Jadi bagi saya betul dia agak rumit, dia suka kerana dia melibatkan perundangan, dia melibatkan pengiktirafan hak warga negara, itu masih. Tapi bagi saya bagi tahu kepada Senior General Perdana Menteri Monglai, kita tak boleh terima serangan, pembunuhan, kampung, rakyat yang tidak berdosa. Okay? Jadi ada permulaan yang baik, walaupun saya setuju dan saya mengaku, masih banyak yang harus dikerjakan.
Dan untuk mengulas lanjut lebih berkenaan dengan isu dan juga krisis di Myanmar, khususnya melibatkan Rohingya, izinkan saya meneruskan sesi dalam bahasa Inggeris. Joining us now is the Senior Lecturer for Department of International Relations, Universiti Sultan Zainal Abidin, UniSZA, Dr. Muhammad Mahbubul Haque, joining us online. Thank you, Doctor, for your time. And I guess the first question that I want to ask you is your evaluation for Malaysia during this entire year chairmanship for ASEAN. And mind you, Doctor, early this year, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, the Prime Minister, have met with the leadership of Myanmar together with leaders from Thailand during his visit to Thailand to try to talk about what's happening in Myanmar, especially the crisis faced by the Rohingya. But then again, by looking out at this entire year during Malaysia Championship, what would you say for Malaysia? Have we done enough for Rohingyas and crisis in Myanmar, Doctor?
Thank you very much to invite me for these discussions. Actually, before coming to these discussions, I had conversations with the Rohingya community leaders globally. Those are in abroad and inside of the Myanmar, including of the Rohingya refugee camps. What they had shared with me, they had the really very big expectation, especially from the Malaysia, Indonesia, especially from the Malaysia, because Malaysia currently chair the ASEAN. And the present leaderships of the Malaysia, they have big expectations. Yes, Malaysia trying to do not only this time. I would like to go back a little bit before when the 2012 communal riots against the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, 2016-17 genocide time, Malaysia, only the ASEAN countries who raised the voice to stop the violence and stop the genocide against the Rohingya. So this is not the only this year. Malaysia continuously talking against the Myanmar policy, Myanmar rules against the Rohingya Muslim minority. Even the genocide time, even now, if I would like to say, Malaysia is the only country hosting the largest number of the Rohingya refugee among the ASEAN countries. So Malaysia is not only talking about the policy-related matters. Malaysia also hosted largest number of the Rohingya refugee. Yes, might be they have the big expectation as a scholars or as an academics. What I understood, what I believe that Malaysia trying to play their role during the chairperson's time, chair time. At the same time, I believe that Malaysia in long term will raising these issues and highlighted these issues and trying to help the Rohingya communities for their resolve this crisis, long-standing crisis. And this crisis not started from the 2015 or 16 genocide. It started 1982 or before. If you have to go back in Myanmar's political history, 1960s this problem started. And within the ASEAN, I think so. It is really appreciated what Malaysia is playing for them, playing role for them. And in future, I believe that Malaysia, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Malaysian government, and Malaysian people will continue their support in favor of the Rohingya Muslim minorities in Myanmar.
Doctor, I think that's a good start for our discussion, not just to understand what have ASEAN done, what have Malaysia done during its chairmanship, and also what's actually happening in Myanmar, especially in regards to Rohingyas community. But we're going to take a short break, Doctor, and then coming up next, we're going to go even deeper to understand whether or not actually all the atrocity, genocide, as you put it just now, has stopped against Rohingya before we move forward to look for sustainable peace in Myanmar. We're going to take a short break and coming back later on. Bertemu kembali, and joining us now, Senior Lecturer, Department of International Relations, UniSZA, Dr. Mahbubul Haque, still joining us online. Doctor, just now you mentioned that you have spoken to some of the representative from Rohingyas, and then previously, yesterday, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Sultan Ibrahim, said at least one of the achievements that we get this year is at least to make sure that attack against Rohingyas in Myanmar has stopped. Now, my question is it true? Is this atrocity have stopped, at least for now, Doctor?
Actually, with all respect of our political leaders, in Myanmar, inside situation is completely changed if I compare to few years before, because Myanmar is highly fragmented situation, and Myanmar government or the military government has not much control many places of the Myanmar inside, including Arakan, Rakhine state, which is the habitual residence of Rohingya Muslims community. This Arakan or Rakhine state at this moment controlled by the Rakhine Buddhist forces Arakan army. Arakan army mostly control the Rakhine states. And at the same time, I would like to remind you in here, last 1.5 years, when the Arakan army controlled the Rakhine states, they also started atrocity against the Rohingya. And Rohingya Rakhine atrocity is not new. It started during the colonial time and until now. In Myanmar, inside of the Myanmar, it's a very important dynamics, political dynamics. When the Rohingya questions are coming, Myanmar military, Arakan army or other Buddhist forces become very much united to fight against the Rohingya Muslims. And they are trying to talk, there are some narratives developed in the Myanmar society there. Rohingyas are an outsider, Rohingyas are illegal migrant immigrants, how you can say that. So this is very common positions about the Myanmar military government, some Myanmar political forces, civil society, including Arakan army. Those are now controlling in the Myanmar. Well, those are controlling at this moment in Rakhine state. When the Muslims questions or Rohingya questions are coming, they have the same positions. Yes, after forming the national unity government in exile, now they acknowledge that yes, Rohingya is our national ethnic groups. We should have to recognize their citizenship rights and restore their citizenships. Yes, there are little bit changes coming after military coup, when the political parties, the democratic forces form the government in exile. But it does not mean that Myanmar society has changed their perceptions on the Rohingya. This is one thing. Secondly, if you look the inside of the Myanmar, we would like to establish inclusive situations for all other ethnic minorities and other forces. You should have to include the Rohingya issue. Second point I would like to highlight it in here. If you look last 50 years, ASEAN regions, genocide, atrocity, I think you cannot compare the Rohingya atrocity and genocide to others. Yes, we have one examples in 1975 to 1979 in Cambodia genocide. Next genocide conducted Myanmar military 2016-17 against the Rohingya. And it is now under the process of International Court of Justice. But there is not much progress. Even though ICJ giving some measures to protect the Rohingya Muslims minority. Who will take these actions? Who will take the measures? Myanmar military government has no any authority, has no power, has no ownership inside of the Rakhine state. On the other hand, Rakhine state at this moment, what I discussed with you earlier, controlled by the Arakan army. And Arakan army has also the same position against the Rohingya Muslim minority. They also conducted genocide. Genocide is still going on. It is not my arguments. You can look the Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and other international reports, even ASEAN Human Rights Parliamentarian for Human Rights. They also mentioned last 2-3 days before I saw ASEAN Parliamentarian for Human Rights, Amnesty International also urged to the ASEAN leadership, please don't sidelined the Myanmar issues. Please highlighted the Rohingya issues. Without Rohingya issue, Myanmar issues should not be completed. We know the 5-point consensus. 5-point consensus, we're talking about after the Myanmar military coup, but there is no single word spent for the Rohingya. But Rohingya faced the genocide in last 50 years history in ASEAN region. So without genocide, without addressing the genocide, how you can ensure the inclusiveness, how you can ensure the sustainable peace in Myanmar? It is completely impossible. So if you would like to hiding the Rohingya issue, if you like to sideline the Rohingya issue, I think Myanmar problems should not be solved. So this is one of the most, you can say, the protected crisis in the Myanmar political history. You need to address it, and how you can address it. It means need to incorporate Rohingya community in this peace process. Otherwise, 5-point consensus or any other new initiatives will not be successful. And I would like to say again, perpetrators should go punished. If we cannot ensure the accountability or justice for the Rohingya, it will happen again and again. After Darfur, we can say that international community stopped the genocide. No, it was not possible. If we ensure the justice and accountability, then it will be possible in future. You will not find these kinds of crises again in ASEAN region. So in these cases, I would like to say ASEAN community, ASEAN leadership has a major role, not only for the 5-point consensus. If you really want to establish peace inside of the Myanmar, you have to incorporate Rohingya issue. You have to ensure accountability and justice for the genocide victims, genocide survivors. But sometimes, or many times, I would like to say we are silent about the genocide victims. It is not merely issues of the refugee. Actually, it is. I would like to say what my experience saying on the Rohingya issues last 21 years. I have been working in this matter. I would like to say this is the Palestine situations happen. Palestine in our region in the Rohingya. Firstly, Myanmar government started policy of exclusion, and now Myanmar government and Rakhine Buddhist also started policy of elimination Rohingya. They wanted to establish Muslim-free Rohingya. It is part of their game. They would like to say there is no more Rohingya inside of the Myanmar. Currently, not more than 500,000 Rohingya living inside of the Myanmar. So in this situation happen, and it means this community will be going other countries and take refugee, and they will grown up without any identity. Right now, Malaysia hosting the largest numbers of the Rohingya refugees. These refugees living, we know, Malaysia bearing this responsibility. I don't want to say the burden responsibility. Rather than I would like to say the Malaysia and few other countries taking the responsibility. Who is these victims of the genocide? Rohingya first. Second victims, Bangladesh. Bangladesh, economically poor country, but hosting 1.53 million Rohingya refugees since 2016. Malaysia, that according to UniSZA number, the third largest number of the Rohingyas are living in Malaysia. And is it possible for Malaysia will bearing this responsibility decade after decade? Yes, it is now more than decades, nearly decades. If I'm looking, Rohingyas are coming in Malaysia not only for 2016, before the 1980s Rohingyas are coming. So it means we should have to emphasize on inside of the Myanmar. Inside of the Myanmar, if we cannot solve this problem, it will become again and again. So inside of the Myanmar, we have to convince the Myanmar political groups, militaries, that you should have to recognize the Rohingya identity inside of the Myanmar state framework. If Myanmar people really would like to establish the peace without Rohingya, it is impossible or it is incomplete. Now the major questions are coming there. We are not talking about the inside of the problem. We are talking mostly in the refugee problem. Refugee problem is the secondary crisis. First crisis need to ensure their civil and political rights. What they enjoy. It's a very difficult situation in Myanmar. Until 2016, in Myanmar parliament, Rohingya representatives. After 2016, there is no Rohingya representative. During the 1936, the colonial time, to until 2015, Rohingya representative in Myanmar. But on the other hand, Rohingya as an ethnic minority is not recognized as a races. 135 races. So it's a very complicated story. So it is difficult to explain in this short time. But I would like to say, if we really would like to solve this problem, we should have to emphasize inside of the Myanmar. Need to restore their citizenships. And at the same time, need to assure the civil and political rights and economic, social, cultural rights, like other people of Myanmar. Otherwise, this problem should not be solved. Then we have to look. Next, we have to look the refugee problems. Okay, refugee problems, this is not only for the inside of the Myanmar. Other Myanmar neighboring countries also affected. Malaysia is not neighboring country of Myanmar, but Malaysia is affected. When the refugee problem started, Malaysia is also affected. Malaysia is far away compared to the neighboring countries. Neighboring countries are also not much focus this problem. Rather than they are taking just a sort of ad hoc based policy. We need sort of regional mechanism to support the Rohingya displaced people. Those are coming in Bangladesh or Malaysia, Thailand or Indonesia or India. The large number of Rohingyas are in India. They are living very difficult situation, especially for the present Indian government policy against the Muslims. So we need the holistic approach inside. At the same time, need to ensure extraordinary mechanisms to protect the rights of displaced Rohingya outside of Myanmar. That is my understanding. If you really want to ensure the sustainability, peace, the two areas. One is inside of the Myanmar, to restore the civil and political rights. On the other hand, those are living outside of the Myanmar as a refugee. So in these cases, we need to establish a regional mechanism to protect the rights of refugees or protect the rights of forced displaced people from Myanmar. Otherwise, we cannot resolve this problem because it will be discussed, but it will not resolve the problems. If you look the refugee camps in Rohingya refugee camps, what actually you are now showing in the video footage. This refugee camps, 3 million people living within a few square kilometers. It is the one of the most densely populated refugee camp in the world. Malaysia, there is no refugee camp, but the refugee you can find left side, right side, anywhere in Malaysia you can find the Rohingya peoples are living there. It is because Malaysian peoples has a generosity to accept them. But how long Malaysia will take this responsibility if other countries are not coming together to help them? So this is the time to need to understand how we should ensure their rights as a forced displaced or as a refugee people in outside of the Myanmar. So don't need to mixing together. We need to solve these problems inside and outside. Yeah. So this is my understanding, what I worked with them and when I was thinking of them, because I had a few research in the Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. I found that people don't want to come. Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand would like to stay their country, but it is completely impossible for them because they have the policy, Rohingya free Myanmar. How they can live with them? Now they have started policy of elimination. So we need to protect these people.
Doctor, I think the message is very clear. Discussion just cannot just focus on 5 points consensus that will only solve Myanmar issues, but will not solve Rohingya issues. Thus, we need to incorporate Rohingya when we talk about the crisis in Myanmar, so that it can solve all of this very complex issue currently faced by Myanmar. And next year will be the next chairman will be Philippines, and we will hope to have a next conversation with you, Doctor. As much as Malaysia have done today, maybe next year we also need to push for Philippines to continue with the same momentum. Thank you so much, Senior Lecturer of Department of International Relations, UniSZA, Dr. Muhammad Mahbubul Haque, joining us this evening to touch specifically on how much has ASEAN moved and done for Rohingya, which is part and parcel of crisis happening in Myanmar. Sekian sahaja waktu ini. Saya Irfan Faruqi. Salam hormat.